It's something. Yeah.
It's me?
Yeah. And this is from Ben's. We didn't have sugar, he went to buy.
Shkoyach mention.
Hakarat HaTov is called in English.
What?
Hakarat HaTov.
No.
Thank
You
you.
know what? You don't have. If you don't go shopping by yourself, then you don't have what you want.
אני לוקח שוויתן לו אחד. אני לוקח שוויתן לו. אחד.
If you drive a truck, this is the Sicha for you.
Oh.
So in the Parsha, they gave a golus to Bnei Gershon, Bnei Merari, Bensha. If you were Ben from Bnei Merari, you got wagons. Gershon, you got wagons. Kahos, you didn't get a wagon. Avodas hakodesh shaleim bakosef you saw. They have to carry it on their kosef, on their shoulders.
Mishkan was heavy. They have to be.
They crush him. Huh?
They carry it, no?
Oh, very good.
He drives the truck. He really doesn't drive the truck. He just sits there.
And he just sits there, and presses gas and turns the wheel.
I'll be here.
So, what happened in the days of David HaMelech? The Plishtim, there was a war, and the Plishtim stole the Aron, and then they had a problem that they had miraculously they had these rats or these little animals that went in and would go into the hes to the acharaim arangekrochen aruskrishlap the kishkes. Kipshute the aruskrishlap the kishkes. And when the Plishtim got realized that this is not really fun to hold on to the Aron Kodesh, they gave it back to the Jews, the Plishtim. The Plishtim made these achborim made out of gold. That's you know what I mean? That's a piece of art. They made achborim made out of gold. And
why that?
Why are achbar made out of gold?
No, why not?
I think today, if you went to Manhattan to what's it called, they would consider it nice art. Achbar made out of gold.
No, why
you
not?
Put diamonds in for eyes. You put some diamonds in for the eyes.
Why not
a little bit
a more
fur.
majestic animal?
Because that was the animal. The animal that was kriching the kishkes was achborim. They had these miraculous achborim that came to Plishtim. Maybe we can find a few more such achborim and send them into Gaza.
In the oldies. The oldies.
Huh?
Even the union, he got achbarim.
What?
היוניון שמפגינים, אז הם באים עם בלון כזה של עכבר כזה גדול.
כן?
היוניון, כן.
Yeah, because they say that they're rats that actually first the picket line.
Oh, yeah.
אז הם באים עם עכבר כזה גדול, היוניון.
So that was the story. The Plishtim were hit with an unbelievable amount of achborim. And we have to get a couple of those achborim, send them into Gaza, send them into to Yericho, another couple of places like that, Ramallah, Shem,
Iran.
Yeah, in Iran. Send a couple of them to the Ayatollahs. And anyway, that was an unbelievable thing, a miraculous thing that happened. They realized they have to give back the Aron. They gave back the Aron. At some point, the David HaMelech decided to bring the Aron to Yerushalayim, and there was a big procession, and they put it on a agola, they put it on a wagon. At some point, the wagon went boing, it went flying up in the air, and there was Uzzah. Uzzah thought that the Aron is going to fall off the wagon. It was like a flat bed, and he was scared when they went bang, and the Aron went up in the air. Uzzah was scared that the Aron will fall off the wagon, and he put his hands to it, and as soon as he put the hands to the Aron, he died. David the Melech was very upset, and he called the place Peretz Uza, and he said, I'm not bringing the Aron to Yerushalayim, and he diverted it on the side of the road, and it was there for 3 months, and the person that took care of the Aron became unbelievably successful, and then David the Melech said, okay, we're going to bring the Aron to Yerushalayim, and that was a story where they had a big procession, and David the Melech was dancing, and there's a beautiful piece of Chassidus in the Tanya about this, and it's like a nice circle of Nigla and Pnimis HaTorah in this sugya, which is unbelievably beautiful sugya. The time is short. We'll try to cover it with speed. First, let's read. The Rambam counts it as one of the 613 mitzvahs. One of the mitzvahs say, the Rambam writes in the Mishnah Torah, La Rambam Kli Amigdash, Ha'oivdim by Perik Bez Aloch Yud Bez Beish Malichim L'Sa'orim Makom Makom Em Malichim L'Sa'orim Gabi Behema V'loi Ala Gola Ela Mitzvah L'Noit L'Oi Ala Kesef. You're not allowed to take it. You came perfect timing. We're starting to read the text. We'll start again. Beish Malichim L'Sa'orim, when they carried the Aron Makom Makom from place to place, Em Malichim L'Sa'orim Ala Behema V'loi Ala Gola Ela Mitzvah L'Noit L'Oi Ala Kotef. You have to take it on your shoulders. Well, the fish shakach dava v'not la'alagola nifritz peretz b'uza, because he was punished because he forgot and he put it on. There was a punishment to David.
How David can forget such a thing?
Right. So there's a big thing in Chassidus about this. How could David Melech forget such a thing? El mitzvah l'naseh la'kosev, you have to carry it on the shoulders. Shenemba avodas hakodesh aleim v'kosev yiso. Okay. Aloch Yud Gimel Shenois Nois Nalakosav Nois and Ponim Connected Ponim. The Koinim, I'm already jumping ahead. That was a machlokas if it was a Koinim did it or the Leviim did it. In the Midbar, the Leviim did it. The Rambam says that later it changed, only the Koinim could do it. The Ramban got very upset and bent out of shape how the Rambam could say such a thing. Anyway, it's either the Koinim or the Leviim. They would carry and they would be face to face, only face to face. V'achareim lachutz, pneim lifnim, v'nizorim shel yishamtu abadim in Aron, shameis echem in abadim in Aron, loike shenam tabas Aron yu abadim lo yisurim imenu. Let's read the Sefer HaMitzvahs. Next piece.
How many people carry the Aron?
4. Sefer HaMitzvahs, he writes, Hishet zivonu sheyisa hakoinim ha'aron al kasveim, kishenir tzelos azoyisem emakom l'makom, hu amru ke'avodas hakodesh aleim, b'kosef yisol, v'av pishe ze hatziv v'bol alviyim be'es hahi, at that time, there was not enough koinim to go around. So the Eibush said, you know what, let the Leviim help out.
Only time they used it
They walk awkwardly.
They walk, backwards.
the backwards, and not only that, but they say that the Aron actually carried them. But besides that, the only time they actually used that is when they went to war. Otherwise,
if they went in the midbar, they went from place to place.
I'm saying after the midbar. I'm talking about
walk sideways.
Yeah, exactly. Really, the mitzvah is intended for the kohenim. Commotion is born b'sefer Yeshua b'sefer Shmuel. Kasher tziva David losas ha'aron b'pam hashni Omar b'divrei hayom v'yisa b'nei alavim es ha'aron ha'elikim asher tziva Moshe b'dvar Hashem b'ketfam b'moites aleim think shezocher divrei hayom machloikes ha'kohenim l'eser v'arba mishmoros Omar elab kudoisam l'abedosam l'avad l'beis Hashem k'mishpotam ne'aron avim kasher tzivo Hashem l'kei Yisrael. So really, there were the kohenim that were carrying it. And only in the midbar did they not have enough kohenim, so the Eibush said to let the Leviim carry it. Biru chacham zacharim l'brocha, sh'roim ez al yoysim avodas hakohenim, losses es ha'aron ala kosu. V'zeh kasher tziva Hashem l'kei Yisrael. That's a pshat in the pasuk when it said k'mishpotam b'yad Aaron avim kasher tzivo Hashem l'kei Yisrael. That really the Navi is telling us that the original tzivui of the Eibush there was for the kohenim. It just as an exception in the midbar, the Leviim were allowed to do it. V'loshen sifri k'mishpotam kasher tzivo Hashem echet tzivo levnei kos loy nasan k'avodas hakodesh aleim b'kos of Yisor hin nizbar l'chol shemitzvah zu mechlal hamitzvahs. Okay. Chinuch. Let's just read quickly. the Chinuch writes, mitzvahs masa aron bekosov shenitztav hakoinim shiso aron al bekosov shemalichin oisin Yisrael b'makom shenema kavodas hakodesh aleim bekosov Yisrael. Mishor shea mitzvah v'shekol ikar kvodim shel Yisrael le'atoyre sheba nivdelu mishor ha'amim. Naso chelek Hashem. That this is the covet of all Yidden is the Torah. And what makes a Yid special? The Torah. What makes our nation a nation? The Torah. That the most exalted people among us, which are the Kohanim, should carry it on their shoulders. It's obvious what the mitzvah is. To go and base malchama l'shum davaracha. V'lo yisu ba'agol al gabi behema. Kvar samu chachamim l'davi toya b'dava shetinoikes koirin boy. That David the Melech made a mistake. B'nosai ha'oren al agolav. V'nehekes mitzvah zub izman she'isol al admosam ki ozay yitzechem loses oren bris Hashem ipnei malchama or kasher yitzava malkim. Aval achshe ba'venesenu ein lo melech v'lo oren loses b'shum malkim. Mitzvah zu nehekes motelas al shevet Levi v'al shor Yisrael שהסכימו על ידיהם, וזהו שנוגו בגיליוס, בגוליוס, היום, that today in the Golus, that there is a minig, the Hoiti Sefer Torah Likras Malkei Umas. Very interesting to hear the Chinuch record this minig. There was an old minig that when the king came, they would go out and they would greet the king with the Sefer Torah.
You
remember that story with the Shamash? So
by Europe also, no?
It's a minute, yeah. So so it's interesting. The Chinuch Uzarishan records this minig, so you see that it's a minig atik yomin.
It's from the Sipuet Tzadikim. We have the small, but but even Agoy king also.
Ein ze b'chiv mitzvah zu klal. Shekol yibnei Yisrael Hashem lotzim oisoi. I'm just saying it's like fascinating that he like throws it in. The Chinuch throws it in that in his days there was Chinuch is written in Spain 700, 800 years ago. So you see that this was a minig way back when the king would come, they'd go out with the Sefer Torah to greet the king. Loshen Rambam, Beishem Malich Naoram, B'chein Loshen someone else, B'chein B'shosha Mitzvah, Kol Iker Kvedenu Kei Tersein HaGedosha. Okay. Minchas Chinuch writes like this. V'ani Eini Maven? I don't understand. Kiven di Alfinu Me Posek Avodas HaKodesh Alayim B'Kosov Yisov. Hanemeres B'vnei Kohos. V'Avodas B'nei Kohos Mevur B'Parshas B'Midbar De'Amenoire V'Ashulchem V'Mizbach Azov Hakol Hoya Avodas B'nei Kohos. Boy Tzirichim losses, Veloy Malichim Agolas, Kidiksiv of Nekos Loy Nasan, Ki Avodas HaKodesh Shalom B'Kosov Yisov. Him came Maishna the Nok to Oren, who adin Shulchan, Menoire, Chulu, V'Chulu Aklal, Kol Shem Avodas B'nei Kos, I mitzvah say Lasa B'Yadayim, Veloy Lagolas, V'Tzorichim, V'Efshem Divei Kabbalah, however Tzorichim, Ki Levia Amur Vur B'Torah, Kol Avodas B'nei Kohos, Hoyan Oisim B'Yadayim, Veloy Lagolas, V'Tzorichim. Unusual that the Minchas Chinuch should be left with a Tzorichim. So I don't understand. If a child learns a Pasha, knows that the Bnei Gershon got wagons, the Bnei Merari got wagons, well, the Bnei Kahos, Loin Nosan, the people of Kahos did not get wagons. Everything they carried because of. They carried the Shulchan because of, and the Mizbeach they carried because of, and that's why there's an Ramban that explains why the Mizbeach was so small, because it was heavy, so there was, and everything was carried because of. There was nothing that was not carried because of. How could the Rambam write and the Chinuch write that there's a mitzvah, one of the 630 mitzvah, to carry the Oren because of? What's with the menorah? What's with the shulchan? What's with everything else that needs to be carried because of? Question. So Tzedek also asks this question because in the Maimer, we'll talk later. There's a Chassid, an unbelievable shtickle of Chassidus about this. He says Tzorech Dion, it's a kasha, and the Rebbe, when he said the Sikha, the Rebbe said that there was a story that once someone Tzedek said a Maimer, at the end he said Tzorech Dion. So afterwards, when they were telling over the Maimer, so one of the Maskilim had an answer had a brilliant pshat to answer the Tzorechim. There was a famous mashpia in Lubavitch, Reb Shmuel Groenem. He was, it wasn't yet Lubavitch, but that he was a young man. He took off he was wearing a pantoffel, he was wearing slippers. He took it and he hit him on the head. He said, the Tzemach Tzedek said Tzorechiyun. You're going to answer the Tzorechiyun. So I told my family today that I have a collection of the last few shiurim we did. One of them was a Tzorechiyun from the Tzemach Tzedek. Yes, it's Tzorechiyun. What would that? I gave a share about this a few weeks ago. So I had a teretz. So and I'm publishing it now. So they said, what are you going to do? What's if Reb Shmuel Groenem will come and hit you on the head with his slipper? So I'll grab the slipper and lick it.
It's like,
so the Rebbe said that even though who's going to come, the Minchas Chinuch said Tzorechiyun, Tzemach Tzedek couldn't figure out the answer. Truth is, Tzemach Tzedek did give an answer later. I guess at that Fabrengen, the Rebbe didn't, or whatever. The Rebbe said the Rebbe said, I'll try to give a teretz, and then if someone can find a better teretz, Tove Olav Brocha. So it's funny, because at that Fabrengen, the Rebbe gave a teretz, and I found that this is mechuva mamish ois ba'ois mila b'mila to a teretz that the Briskerov gave. How come the Rebbe didn't sign to the Briskerov? So because they have a shtick in Brisk that his sefer is not sold. They don't sell a sefer. You have to, if you're a Talmud in Brisk, by the Avram Yeshua, or also by the David, so you go and you ask, and they don't overcharge. It's charging $6.50. But some mishagas,
they don't sell it to everybody.
No.
So
you have to.
So where he got
I years ago, I reminded my wife today that 25 years ago we were in Eretz Yisrael. Her cousin, she has a cousin of the same age, and we came to visit them. And we had supper in their house, and I saw the brisk Rav Sefer on the table. I said, "Oh, how do you have it?" He said, "I bought it today." So he saw that I wanted. So he said, "Beseder, I'm giving it to you. Don't worry." I was learning that, I think, then by the Avram Yeshua. He says, "Don't worry, I can get myself another copy." So, and the first teretz that Rebbe gave is mamish. At the end of the brisker of Sefer, there's like 4 or 5 letters, and in one of them there's a long letter where he gives exactly this teretz that you'll hear in a minute from the Rebbe, and he loves that teretz. The interesting thing that Rebbe also liked the teretz, but Kedarko, I guess that's why the Rebbe originally even said that he's going to give a pshat. Maybe someone come up with a better pshat. He already had in his mind that this pshat is not so, even though it's a brilliant pshat. And then the Rebbe came up with another pshat, which he thought was like Amita Shaltoyre, that was a much better pshat. So first, let's go to what was the Rebbe's simple pshat, and then we'll look inside. The Rebbe, basically, a very simple pshat. The Rayas is this and that, but I mean the pshat is very simple. That the Rambam says there's mitzvahs that the only thing that you count 650 mitzvahs is mitzvahs hanaheges ladoiris. If it's a mitzvah that's only shaykh when the Yidden are in the desert, you don't count it. It's interesting that Rambam says why. He says that the mitzvahs is connected 248 limbs of the person. Every mitzvah is for one limb. How could a person be missing a limb? If there's a mitzvah that's only relevant in the days of the midbar, but it has to be. It's interesting that Rebbe points out. Usually, when we learn in Nigla, that we say that the Ramach mitzvahs, the Keneged Ramach Evorim, is just a simon. How are you going to remember this 248 mitzvahs? Similohem, like the Rambam says, it's a simon to remember. But Api, the Zohar HaKodesh, it's not stam a simon, it's a sibah. Why did the Eibishter give 248 limbs? Because the Eibishter has 248 limbs, and we have 248 limbs, and each one of our Evorim connected to Eibishter through the 248 mitzvahs. But here you see, it's interesting that Rambam in the Sefer HaMitzvah says it can't be that there's 248 limbs. What are you going to tell me? One limb is missing? So it has to be that a mitzvah is neheges ladoiris. Huh? Wisdom. Exactly. So then, the Rebbe says the answer is very simple. That you could say that all the other kelim was not only a mitzvah when they were in the desert. The avodah sakoida shalem mekosov yisrael was only the 40 years in the desert. The menorah, the mizbeches, the shulchan, everything they carried was only for the 40 years in the desert. But there was a special mitzvah that stayed forever and ever, the Aron. The Aron is a mitzvah in the Haggis Ladoides that you have to carry it on your shoulders. And then the Rebbe found, after the Fabring, he found there's a sefer called Ma'aser Nisim. Rebbe Avram ben Arambam, someone asked him this question, and he says there's a story about Yoshio Amelech, that he said that they should hide the Aron. And he said, Ein lochem masa b'kosef. L'chuyiv des Hashem alekechem. Now that we hid the Aron, Gemara has a whole discussion when this happened, did they ever find it again, they didn't. The way our understanding, the way that Rambam brings lahaloch is that second base of Mikdash, the Gemara says, Chosa hid Aron, the Aron Kodesh never came back. Yeshua hid it, and it's still Ad Hayom Hazeh, it's hidden somewhere under the base of Mikdash. So he said, that's it. You don't anymore have the avodas hakodesh aleim because of l'chayre. They still had the shulchan, they still had everything else in the base of Mikdash. So the Avram ben Arambam says that I from this pasuk that carrying everything because it was only in the desert. There's only one mitzvah l'doides, and that is to carry the Aron. Haint is a chelik from kinus toida.
Were they carrying them?
So that Avram ben Arambam says when Mashiach is going to come, we're going to have to carry it. We're going to have to go down the basement, the base of Mikdash. Mamash, that's what he says. I'll tell you what, I do the imaging thing on the thing, and I didn't have enough time to fix all the words, but you'll see a little bit from the last. The words are a little submished over here, but if you turn the page, you say, and then there's again words a little mixed up. I have here a copy of it. So he says that the bottom line is that when Mashiach is going to come, we're going to the Mashiach is, it's a mitzvah l'doides. Right now, okay, we don't know where the Aron is, and we don't want to go there. But it's a mitzvah and a haggis l'doides. Mashiach is going to come. He's going to tell us where to go in the basements of the base of Mikdash. Somewhere down.
Maybe Yeshua was not saying halacha. Maybe he's saying just practically we're not going to be schlepping into Kelim anymore because there's the second base of Mikdash. Where are we going with it?
I know, you can ask. It's not the Rambam is not the most unschluggable person. He's not considered a rishon to the extent that no one can. You don't slug up a Rambam. But I haven't seen that. Should say there's a lot of times that Abraham said, "I heard this from my father." He heard it from his father. Heard it from his father. A lot of times but he was a big Talmid Chacham. But sometimes after, I don't think so. He wasn't. I don't know if he's considered with that chivus. But sometimes when he says from the name of the Rambam, Yamol Tazanosh. Okay.
All the killings are in Rome now. That's what this.
I don't know. That's what they.
The Rambam said very big things about it. Not to say after them. There's some writings from the Rambam.
Yeah, interesting. Unbelievable. So
it's like the Magid.
You know what? A lot of the Gedolei Yisrael, they had like the Rambam, his grandson, like he wasn't a Godel, but he was a Großer Gewir, and he spent a lot of his money to print the Rambam and to defend the Rambam. The Maral also, he had a son was a Talmud. His grandson is given as Zvun, but was very close to his Zayda and supported a lot of tzedakah. It's interesting. Certain Gedolei Yisrael who had. Okay, here is a beautiful thing. That even though this is l'chayda such a teretz, it's a good teretz. The Rebbe says doesn't. Then the Rebbe said it in that Fabrengen and it was l'kovet kinus Torah, and then the Rebbe said, but he doesn't like it. Why? Because the Rambam himself should have made mention. And Sefer HaMitzvahs, the Rambam style is to be more specific. Such a big chidush to say that originally the mitzvah was to carry because of all the kelim, and after 40 years it changed. That was a mitzvah she'ein heges l'doides. This is yena heges l'doides. The Rambam should have mentioned something like this. We don't find something like this. The Rebbe didn't like the teretz. So the Rebbe said that he found a peladic thing. There's the Shor Meshiv was Godel B'Yisrael in his time. The Rav of Lemberg, Reb Shol Nosson Nottenson. And in the Sefer Shol Meshiv, Chela Gimel, there's a tshuva to Reb Moshe Miyassy. And he writes that everyone asks on the Rambam, who told him that there's such a mitzvah of Ma'amasa B'Kosev? V'lo nimtza mekoyre. V'hagon Reb Menachem Mendel Malabavich Zechrein Lebrocha והגאון המלאך מנדל זכרנו לברכה מלובביץ' אמר שכן מבואר במדרש רבה פרשת במדבר.
That's a matzah.
Tzimach Tzedek. So the Rebbe says, "Oh, gefunden that the Sheol Meshiv writes so this Rebbe Moshe Miyassy, the Rebbe says probably there was a chassid that had unbelievable arichas yomim. He lived more than 100 years. I told the story here, I think 2 weeks ago at a Fabrengens at Sashgocha Pratis. The kid said the story again was that the Alter Rebbe had a chassid that lived all the way to Moldova today, but it's probably an hour flight, an hour and a half flight, maybe 2 hour flight. It's maybe from here to Florida. But can you imagine those days? It was very far. And he was a chassid, the Alter Rebbe, the Mittel Rebbe, and the Tzemach Tzedek. And the Mittel Rebbe had unbelievable akpoda that if you came to hear chassidus by him, on your way back home, you have to stop in every single base medrash in every town. And you have to chassidus.
Yeah, because he used to do it for the Alter Rebbe.
And that was a very big thing, the Mittel Rebbe. So he came into a town, and we went into the base medrash of the Oiv Yisrael. He didn't realize, and he sat down on a chair, and he started to chazal chassidus. And Oilam came around, and it was geschmack, and people were listening. All of a sudden, the Oiv Yisrael comes into some base medrash, the guy stealing the show. And he says, "Agam lichtbish es amal kimi baboyis." So when he heard that, he knew that this is business. And then the Rebbe says, "I wonder if this guy will be moitze shnase. This guy will live a full year." Rebbe Moshe Yitzchak went straight back to Lubavitch, the Mittel Rebbe. The Mittel Rebbe asked him, "Were you began in the Oiv Yisrael's cover? Did you do anything else?" He said, "No, He said, "Oy bazoi estalem lenga fam." Then he bent down. You live longer than the Oiv Yisrael. Then he and then he went at Vegas. You'll outlive his children. He went into Vegas. You'll outlive his grandchildren. And v'kachava, he lived to over 100 years old. I mean, today, Baruch Hashem, but for those days, and the Rabbeim said, there's one of the Rabbeim, it's maybe in the Rebbe's Rishimus, that the first time he had the chiddush of the Alter Rebbe was on a Thursday night, and he told us he's ad yoymo ya'achar, until his last day in his life, Thursday night he was up all night learning, even when he was 100 years old, because of that yechidus. So he was a Yida Talmid Chochem, and I looked before the Shir. I found there's a sefer about the Ruzhin Rebbe, Rabbi Solar Ruzhin. So there's a few stories, beautiful stories about him I found, but this is a short one, so I could share it. So someone said that he heard from Rabbi Yitzchak Moshe Miyassy, that he heard from the Reb Zalman Eliadi, the Alter Rebbe. Well, the kid said that he was traveling, and the mother of Rabbi Solar Ruzhin brought her son, who was a little boy, to the Alter Rebbe to get a bracha. And the Alter Rebbe, and the boy asked the Alter Rebbe, he has a shaila. And when a person finishes Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, he's already so much Mesiras Nefesh, there's nothing left from him. How could he say afterwards, V'aftas Hashem Elokecha b'chol avavcha b'chol nafshecha b'chol meidach? There's nothing left. Could you imagine, 7-year-old kid? It's like, he was wondering what V'afta means, that I love. What's left from me? After I said Echad, there's nothing left to say V'afta. So the Alter Rebbe said, I gave him an answer, and der Kleinschik hat es verstanden. The Alter Rebbe didn't say what his answer was. The Alter Rebbe said, I gave him an answer, and this little kid understood. And he told this to his Talmud, Reb Yitzchak Moshe of Yassi.
Who? The Alter Rebbe?
The Alter Rebbe told us to Reb Yitzchak Moshe of Yassi.
Who was a Talmud of the Ruzhin?
No, he was telling the Alter Rebbe. He was telling him, like, I met this kid years later, when Yisrael Ruzhin became known in the world as the tzaddik. So Rabbi Yitzchak Moshe told the chassidim of the Ruzhin, you should know that I heard when your Rebbe was a little boy, that the Alter Rebbe told me about the godless of your Rebbe.
And that's the Rebbe that he came in the middle of the learning, or is it a different Rebbe?
That's the guy that the Rebbe always said that he used to walk with gold shoes and they didn't even realize they didn't have soles in the bottom. And that his whole Mahalach Avodas Hashem was to be rich in the outside, and he was very shofar ruach in the inside. And ad hayom, the grandchildren of the Ruzhin Tzaddik have that mahalach, right? Of building a beautiful base medrash and bas halcha berachava, and the outside and the inside to be shofar ruach b'yosem. Anyway,
First it over with the horse, no?
that what?
If somebody doesn't talk for 30 days, there is an hour with the vחידושו.
That was with the Ruzhin?
I'll go with it.
I don't remember if that was a Ruzhin. So if I said it, then
Because he came to look at his horse, his fancy white horse.
Kenzain.
Yeah.
I know this is a story, one of the tzaddikim, I don't remember if I said, I can look it up and see. Anyway, so the Rebbe found that there is a tshuva of Sha'ul Meshiv that he writes to Yitzchak Moshe of Miassy, and he says, the Rebbe says it's not clear who said the question, the answer, it's like funny. Probably the Rebbe says he's writing back what he heard from him, because the Sha'ul Meshiv never knew that Tzemach Tzedek, that he lived very far. But probably what happened was that he had a shaykhus with Rabbi Yitzchak Moshe of Miassy, and he told him that he was just in Lubavitch, and he heard a teretz from this kasha from the Tzemach Tzedek. You have to realize he was a Zokim Muflig, he was a Talmud Chacham Otzum, and there was the Alter Rebbe himself used to sometimes say Mamonim only for him. So could you imagine by his grandson, that Tzemach Tzedek, he was a very choshev a person. So it happened to be that he was once by the Tzemach Tzedek, and they spoke on learning, and that Tzemach Tzedek said, the Welt fragt Akasha. He himself, Tzemach Tzedek once asked this question, and left it with a tzorechim. And the Tzemach Tzedek said, I don't know what the question is, it's a befedish and medrash. So let's read the medrash inside, and then the Rebbe gives a pshat for the medrash. The Tzemach Tzedek said, befedish and medrash. What's a medrash? It's not so befedish. You read the medrash and you think about it, you see it. The Medrash says, "Zois esu lahem v'choyu v'lo yamus." Ma ra Kadosh Baruch Hu lahazer al mishpachas hakahos yoytz mishar mishpachas. Why is it the Eibishter said that we should be very careful in mishpachas hakahos? Amar Rabbi Yehuda b'Reb Simon v'Shem b'Shom Rabbi Yitzchak yesh davar amud b'Shevet Levi b'mishpachas kahos m'shem b'chol Yisrael. There's something unique in Levi and kahos. Ketzad kol hashvatim leichpat lahem b'kli beis hamikdash aval shifte shalevi toinim b'kli Hamikdash. That the Shvatim, they didn't care so much about the Kli Hamikdash, but Levi did care. Mishu toim bekroshe, mishu toim bebriche, mishu toim badonim, kachu ibneim marori toinim, mishpachas bnei gershim toinim, kol Kli Hariga, mishpachas bnei kahos be'orim. Davar acher, kama ho yeshivte shalevi mulam Yisrael, Yisrael ma'alkim, levushim sandalim. When they walked in the desert, aval shifte shalevi, shahoya toinim b'chli Hamikdash. I guess as a chshivas for the Kli Hamikdash, mahalchim yachafin. They would walk without slippers. Harei lamadnu, shahoya shifte shalevi mu'ulim akol hashvatim, u'mu'ulim b'shevet Levi, mishpachas kahos, shahoya ben Levi noisem ma'asoi, oy akroshim, oy abrichim, adonim akol davar al hagalos, aval mishpachas kahos, eitonim bekasvein, shaloy elam rishus litnen, ha'oren al hagola. They had no permission to put the oren on the hagola. So what do we see? You already see over here in the Medrash an interesting thing. That the Medrash, it says, why the Aron? Everything. The Aron, Shulchan, the Mizvachas, the Menorah. We see that there's something stands out in the original mitzvah, that there was something that the Aron was different than everything else. בכל המשכן והמלכים כדרכן ופנים כנגד הדרך אבל בני כוס המלכים אחריהם ופנים לאורן כדי שלא יליטן אחר לאורן. They didn't never wanted to show they're behind to the Aron, so they were facing each other. Heaven nimtzes omer אף על פי שהיו גדולים מן שאר המשפחות ואין צריך לאמר מן ישראל לא יהיו רוחן גסה עליהם ואלו משובדים לפני הארון. לא מקיין, לפי שאין גדולה לפני אלוקים. There's no gedula for the Eibishter. Even though they had the most important job, they had unbelievable humility inside of them. Haltini, whatever. Haltini probably means that they were very choshev. Elokim shabbat litan ha'aron ha'yitoinim bo ka'avodim. Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu ha'toyri chayim shinam eitz chayim ila machzikim bo k'chayim hem l'motzei machol b'sarim erapa. ובני כוס מחזיקים בתוירה שיחיים, זורן שנויסם בתוירה, בדינו שיחיה ולא ימוס אהבה. That's why the pasuk says, Zeis asur lahem v'choyev v'lo yamusa dafke for the bnei kahos. What we see a few things in this medrash. Chief thing is we see in this medrash, said the Tzemach Tzedek, that the main thing that the mitzvah was to carry the Aron. Before we get to a little bit of lumdus, the Rebbe says we find that the concept of Gilgul Shua, like a person is chayiv to make a shvua, Reuben to Shimon. He says, by the way, make a shvua that yesterday you didn't cheat me, and the day before you didn't cheat me, and make a shvua that you're not my slave. And you could do that. So we see from the Medrash that the main mitzvah was that they have to carry the Aron Bekosov. Agav Urcha, the Torah said you should also carry everything else Bekosov. But the main thing was to carry the Aron Bekosov. Okay. By the way, the Rebbe says that if you look at the Rambam, you see where did the Rambam get the thing that it's Ponim Keneged Ponim? There's no Gemara, it's a Medrash. There's only one Medrash, this Medrash. So it stands to reason that the two halachas could come from the same Medrash. Because the first halacha is that he singles out the Aron, and the Aron is a special mitzvah. And the second one's Ponim Keneged Ponim. Ponim Keneged Ponim is from this Medrash. So and you see from this Medrash is mashma that there's special mitzvah the Aron. Question is, why should there be a special mitzvah about the Aron? What's unique about the Aron? Obviously, what's unique about the Aron is the Torah. But the bottom line of the lumdus that the Rebbe has like this. The lumdus that the Rebbe has is that when they carried the Aron, it wasn't the pshat. It was in transit. This transportation going on. The Aron was always supposed to be in a mokum kavua. There's no transportation. The menorah gets transportation, VIP transportation. The mizbeches, the shulchan gets a transportation. The menorah doesn't get transportation. It's not a din in the gavra when you're carrying it, din in the chefza. This is the mokum. This is the mokum of the Aron. This is the mokum. Kilu, this is the kodesh kadashim is going with the kohenim. By the other kalim, the other kalim are right now in transit. They're in transit. They're being carried. So you can carry it with a less choshev way, with a more like Sefer Torah. You have to carry a Sefer Torah. But the Aron, it wasn't. This was their mokum. This was their mokum.
Like 24/7, they were holding it.
Yeah, they were holding it, and that holding was considered that this is the mokum of the Aron. This was the mokum of the Aron. It's not the pshat that it's a choshevet transportation. It's not the pshat, it was a choshevet transportation. The other kalim was a choshevet transportation. We're not just loading you on the wagons. It's a choshevet transportation. By the Aron, this was the mokum ha'aron. The mokum ha'aron was the shoulders of the kohen.
A bunch of bodies.
So it's possible that they were standing on Agala, the kehas. They were standing on Agala, but the Aron was on their shoulder, still on their shoulder.
It's a theoretical question if they're allowed to stand on the Aron. But
no, on the Agala. No, on the wagon.
Well, they were walking. You're saying that maybe they could stand, but Lepoil, they were walking on their feet. But this is, and the Rebbe says, look at the Rambam. It's interesting that the Rambam, first of all, that the Rambam brings a story. The Rambam says the halacha in a very big arichas. He says, he starts with the negative, the shlila. And then he says the chiyuv, and then he goes into whole arichas, telling a story. The Rambam usually doesn't tell stories, not a storyteller. Why is the Rambam so ma'irich? Because the Rambam wants to say that it wasn't. He wants to emphasize that the mitzvah wasn't just avodas hakodesh shalem because of Yisrael, because then the menorah is the same and the mizbeches are the same and the shulchan is the same. He wants to say he's starting with the shlila. He's starting with the story of David. Why was there a peretz b'uza? Because when you put it on the agola, it's heipach hakovet. Because Torah, it has to be a davar which is kavua. Torah has to always have a kvius. And when you put it on agola represents the idea of transit. It's in transit right now. So that was the heipach hakovet for the Aron. So elo mitzvah l'nosa l'kosav shenem ha'kavodas hakodesh. The Rambam wants to clarify what's the mitzvah of avodas hakodesh that it was not only a way to when you do transportation for the Kalim of the Beis HaMikdash, that they're very choshev. You don't just put them on a wagon. You carry them because they're choshev. But by the Aron, it's more than that. They're not allowed to be on Agola. They're not allowed to be on Agola. The other Kalim wasn't so much that. It's not allowed to be on Agola. Why? Because that shows a Hepech HaChashivus to the Torah. The Makam of the Torah is always Kavua. So when they carried it, it wasn't only by the other Kalim, was a din in the Levium. How are you supposed to transport the Shulchan? You don't just dump it on the wagon. You take it. But when they carried the Aron, it wasn't only a din in the Levium. How do you carry it? It's a din in the Aron. The Aron always has to be Kavua. It always needs a Makam Kavua. And when we're traveling, the backs of the Kohanim, that is the Makam Kavua. The Rebbe says that's why. So that's why the Aron stands out. This is a mitzvah, which is it's the other ones just when you're taking the Kalim of the Beis HaMikdash, so you have to do it in a choshev way, so you carry it. But this is a unique mitzvah that the Aron has a stationary place, and even when we're moving, this is the stationary place. This is the place for the Aron.
But the Aron always has to have the Torah inside.
The Aron always had the
Yeah.
Torah.
And the chosabim.
If they have to check the Torah, to fix the
Luchas, I don't think they ever fixed the Luchas. No, and fixed the Luchas. The Luchas were miraculous. Chazal say that the Mem and the Samach was always standing there in the middle, even though it was carved out. It was carved from all sides, Mishnei Evrahim, and the Mem and the Samach was always the
what
middle.
was this?
Here.
Dibrot or
Here. That's it at the Dibrot.
Class
Well, there was also
like
there was also a clap in the Torah, but right? Could you imagine this thing was always standing perfect in the middle, the Mem with the middle piece of rock, and it was never went a little higher, it never went to the right or to the left. They never needed to fix the luchas. The luchas were perfect always.
But the cloth,
No, okay. So
cloth they have to fix from the weather.
there was a sefer Torah, right?
That's
It's
a
inside
technical
and the side.
But
There was things in front. They were not inside. They were in the front of the arm. Okay. Anyway, Bekitzer. So so bottom line is, so the second teretz that ever says no, it's not the shot that one was a mitzvah that was temporary and one is ladoidus. Even in the time when they were in the midbar, there was a different type of mitzvah. This was just to transport it in a choshev way. Here, by the Aron, there was a special mitzvah. The makam Aron always has to be kavua. The Rebbe said that this goes very well, that Alter Rebbe has a whole pshat about David the Melech. How come David made such a mistake? And he says the whole thing, Shikha comes from Macharayim, and Torah has to be ponim al ponim. That's why when the Kohanim walked, they have to be ponim al ponim.
the Kohanim,
But the Kohanim also. The Kohanim walked, they have to be ponim al ponim. Shikha comes from Pchinas Acharayim. And David the Melech, why he was punished, Alter Rebbe has a whole thing, why he was punished, but he was punished with the idea of shikha, and because what's the punishment shikha? Shikha has to do with acharayim. When you have ponim, there's no shikha. Just like with Pasha, something that you're very interested in, you never forget. Things that are not so important, you forget. So that's why the shikha was, he could have forgotten Baba Kama, Basta. He could have forgotten anything. He was, because he called Torah's Midas, therefore he was shikha. Well, he could have forgotten anything. Could have forgotten Moitzelachim and Oretz. Why did the Eibush to make you should forget this? Because the idea of shikha means that it's a shikha come from Macharayim, not ponim. And by the Aron has to be always the union of ponim al ponim. Or from the words of the Alter Rebbe, you see also that the main thing of ponim al ponim, the main mitzvah of carrying the Aron, ponim is by the Aron dafke. It's dafke by the Aron. The whole explanation of Chassidus also stands lagabi the Aron.
Rabbi, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, "V'achorai lo yira'u." When he wants to,
And over there was the opposite. Ponim lo yiro. Right. Okay. Anyway, bottom line, first of all, the Hashgacha Prat, says the Rebbe. In Parshas Naso always comes close to Shavuos. And Shavuos is when we get the Luchas. And Parshas Naso is when we talk about is that mitzvah Shinayin test, the mitzvah that you have to carry the Aron on your shoulders, that comes from Pashas Naso. Okay. What is the lesson of Avodas Hashem? So the Rebbe Poshet. When we come to carry the Torah, it has to be ponim el ponim. Has to be ponim el ponim. Has to be ponim el ponim. People tell me when I call them up these days, Rabbi, tell me what you want on the phone. So I tell them I can't. Because in the Siddhis it says that anything that's Kedusha, and especially the high level of Kedusha, it must be ponim al ponim. Must be ponim al ponim.
Video call counts? What do you think?
It has to be ponim. Must be ponim al ponim. Because the acharayim, when it comes to gashmisdika things that we have to deal in the world, whatever it is, to run our business, and whatever we have to do, that we have to do with acharayim. We have to run a business, we have to pay bills, we have to do things in the world, we have to do it with acharayim, not such interest. But when it comes to carrying the weight of the Torah, that we have to do ponim al ponim. That we have to do ponim al ponim. Just like by Matan Torah, it says ponim beponim diber Hashem imochem. That's probably what you wanted to say. Mm-hmm. By Matan Torah, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu said you should know ponim beponim diber Hashem imochem. Same thing when we take on the weight of the Kabbalah Satorah, it has to be in a way of ponim al ponim. It has to be ponim al ponim.
The Aron probably was heavy.
It was very heavy. It was very heavy. It was very, very heavy. As I'll say that it was miraculous. Anyway, so before I go to further, I just want to finish off. I just want to summarize. So you have the first teretz that the Rebbe said, which is machuven, same like the Briskerov's teretz, that this is a mitzvah which is neheges ladoiris. The mitzvah of carrying the other kelim was only in the midvah. The Rebbe doesn't like this teretz. Second teretz is that again that this is a medish. Shor Lamesha heard from the Tzemach Tzedek. It's a fetish medish that to say that the Masa Aron is unique, but it's unique because the other ones was a choshev, a way of transporting the kelim. But the Aron, we're not transporting the Aron. This is the Makam Aron. This is the place. It's always bekvius. What's the lesson of Avodas Hashem? The lesson of Avodas Hashem is that it's always bekvius. The Aron we carry in a way of kvius. We carry it in a way of ponim beponim. We take the yoke of the Torah in the way of ponim beponim. Whatever we have to do in the world is ocher, is acharayim. Torah is ponim. I just want to conclude with this word. Chazal say that the Aron is noises. That even though it was very heavy, but the kohenim, they thought that they're the macho guys, that they're carrying the heavy weight of the luchas. It turns out that they went flying in the air. Ha'aron noises. So there's something that came to me on Chag HaShavuos this year, and I shared it, came out at every Suda, that if you think about it, when the Yidden accepted the Torah, they accepted a very heavy burden. Very, very heavy burden. Especially you have to do chitas and you have to do a mesechta yutas kislev. It's a very heavy burden. All kinds of mitzvahs. It's heavy, yeah. World tzitzis is very heavy. In the summer it's hot and you got to work and it's heavy. It's not light. It's very heavy. The mitzvahs are very heavy. Very heavy. It's heavy. So when but the emes is that you see it with your eyes. People that accept the yoke of Torah and they accept it fully and they take the burden on their shoulder. Ha'aron noises. It's like Chazal say, this is an expression, atefach eche from Welt. Sometimes a person, their feet are not even on the ground. They're like, they're floating, they're happy people. They're not so, gravity is not so teifes mokim by them. Because Aron noises. The people that are carrying the heavy brunt, they're taking upon themselves. The lo shevet levid bovad, al kol ish asher not verucha oisoi. Every Yid that wants to be a Levi, that wants to carry the weight of the luchas on their shoulder, they can carry the weight. You think that you're carrying the Torah, the Torah is really carrying us. one of the stories. There's a Rabbi Yokan, a Choshev father. He was to sit a couple of years the Chad Gadya because he was a Lubavitcher Chosid, and after he was sat in the Chad Gadya, he was sent to Siberia. It was a funny name of the town, and there was already another couple of Yidden that ended up from their Chad Gadya in this town, and they already had a minyan, but they needed a Sefer Torah. Sefer Torah. He came originally from Babroisk to Siberia. He didn't end up with a Sefer Torah in his pocket when he was in the Chad Gadya. That's jail. So he said that in the morning there was chief of the Chalmik, chief of the KGB or whatever it was. There was a guy that would walk out of his house. He had a nice garden and a wall all around his house. And he would see him every morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, exact. He would walk out through the gates, and his suit was always pressed, and he always had all his medals shining on his chest. It's a human being. So even though he was Nebuch, he was here Bal Korcha, but that guy is also probably here Bal Korcha. He would say a nice good morning to him every morning. The guy would ignore him. One day, the guy, there was no one in the street. And the guy looks at him and says, "That's Yiddish?" He said, "Yes." So he said, in the evenings, 7 o'clock, come through these doors. You'll meet me in my garden. He decided to go. I wonder if it was a trap or not, to trust him or not. He went. He came there. And the guy had a shovel in his hand. He gave him a kind of shovel. He said, "Help me out." They're digging and digging and digging. And then he pulls out a bag from under the ground. And he said, "My father gave this to me. This is a Sefer Torah. My Tata gesagt, dass I geben in gute hand. I should give it to good hands. He said, I've been keeping an eye on you. And I see that I'm giving it to good hands." And Reb Fola Khan said he took the Torah, checked it out, it was a nice Sefer Torah. It was a nice Sefer Torah. Next day, the guy disappeared. I guess the guy, he was going to risk his life to give over Sefer Torah, but he didn't. He knew he had a new assignment or whatever. He's being sent away. So he waited for the last day. You hear how people give over Torah to the Torah Gemach? So he gave the last day. He gave it over. It's a story from the Rabbi Khan's father, the Folk Khan. Bottom line is, the Yidden are carrying the Torah for 3,335 years. Sometimes we think that we're carrying the heavy burden on our shoulders. The mitzvah Shinai Tes, the Masa Bakosef, that Avodas HaKodesh Aleim Bakosef Yisod, that Avodas HaKodesh we're taking the yoke of heaven and we're taking it on our shoulders. But you know what? More than we guard the Sefer Torah guards over us. And the Aron Noises Noisav, and we accept the yoke of Torah, and make a tefach from Vel. So in the 7 days that are Tashlumim, that we should accept the Oila Torah on us, and that we should, that in life, we should go floating. We should be Noises Noisav, a tefach from Vel.
You type this up when you copy paste it.
No, I get wherever there is what's called. Sometimes I take the picture.
There's a machine that you can talk to and they write.
I have to do that. I have
to go a dragon. It's a microphone. It's expensive, but it's worth it.
It's worth it. I need it. And then the problem is a few times I tried now, like a few. You have to.
Yeah. Well, it's languages.
The thing is, they only have Hebrew, Bavaras, Faradit.
Oh, dragon?
Yeah. You think I could train it to understand
sure.
Ashkenazit?
Yeah, it has languages.
I'd love to do this.
But you have to work on it.
I know it's a real one.
I have to. It remind me. I check with medical in Israel. They have dragon. They have dragon also.
OCR.
Oh,
this I have there, but I'm saying for myself, like when I type. I type up an Indian, I just typed up something, it took me over 50 hours.
And if you talk to
If I
it,
could talk to it, I'd save a lot of time.
what if you record it and someone else will type it out for you?
The same. I have to, if I can get a program that I could talk,
You can see it all together.
right, I could see it and edit right away, it would be gewaldig.
I have it. I use it for myself.
Yeah?
In fact, I sit down to do emails. I can't type so long. My hands will whip off.
I'd love to.
Yeah, I'll test it out.
Yeah. Parrots.